You are back with the App Show. Mike Agerbo here with John Beeler. Want to chat about VR and AR now. We're all trapped in our homes. Why not escape into virtual reality? Well, I want to go through some of the basics of that. We've got a great guest online. His name is Anshel Sag. He's down in San Diego. He's an analyst. We've had him on the program before. Thanks for joining us, Anshel.
Thanks a lot for having me. I'm happy to chat about AR, VR. It's one of my favorite topics.
Well, it's interesting and even more poignant for you. You actually are recovering from the virus.
Yeah, so I managed to catch it a little over a month ago now, and I was sick for about 3 weeks and ended up getting hospitalized, which wasn't fun.
Well, I'm glad you are on the mend. Let's cover some of the basics of virtual reality. I think when most people do think of VR or virtual reality, they have the image of people with headsets on.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the basic headsets out in the market right now?
So when you're talking about VR specifically, the most popular headsets are going to be the ones from Oculus. They have two headsets. One is the Rift, which is connected to your computer. And then you have the Quest, which has its own processing capabilities. It's basically a headset and a computer, and you get controllers with it, and it's on its own. And that's kind of the most popular right now. That said, there's also PlayStation VR, which has been around for quite some time and has actually sold the most out of all the headsets. And then you have the premium high-end headsets for PCs, like the Index from Valve, who makes Half-Life Alyx, which is their first AAA VR game. And then you also have HTC with the Vive. And those are more high-end because they require a actual setup where you have these IR laser emitters firing off lasers every millisecond, giving the headset its position, which doesn't come cheap, and it requires some setup. The other headsets are very simple. There's a bunch of Microsoft-based headsets as well. They're called Windows Mixed Reality headsets. Acer, HP, Lenovo, Samsung, they all have their own versions of this headset. And those are more affordable and very easy to set up, but also can get you into VR at a very low price point if you have a moderately decent PC.
My first, I guess, official headset was the Oculus Go, which was the predecessor to the Quest. And it was really essentially an Android phone strapped inside a headset with a couple of displays. And it was pretty low powered. It was pretty inexpensive, though. I think you can get them now for about $200 Canadian.
Yeah, and like $120 US.
Yeah, I know. But the nice thing is, I mean, I got them specifically to look at 360 photos I was taking with my drone or with my cameras.
And that's perfect.
Yeah, and it's pretty amazing what you can do, even on a low-end headset, as far as escapism, which I think is what a lot of people are looking for right now. Being able to just go to the beach, virtually, even at a low-resolution setting, is still pretty immersive and still pretty decent, even on some of the low-end headsets.
Yeah, I would say my Go has collected dust ever since I got the Quest, which is admittedly a more high-end device. The nice thing about the Quest is it's a $400 investment, and that's it. There's no more, hardware you need to get. And $400 is, I think, at least US, is pretty reasonable. And I think it's attainable for a lot of people. And stock seems to be improving. The one big problem Oculus has had with the Quest is it's basically been out of stock since November because they started advertising it in November. And that's when people started realizing how awesome it is. And they struggled to keep it in stock. COVID-19 obviously didn't help, but they've been out of stock for before that. So that's my recommendation for most people. I have a VR PC. I have this PC. Got another one in the living room. Both have VR headsets. I still prefer the Quest because it's just so easy. You pop it on and you go. There's no turning on the PC, logging in again, typing in passwords. There's none of that. You just
how do you get what are you looking at on that?
So the Quest I'm actually using for rehab. So, but the great thing is that it remembers the rooms that you map out. So you map out a room once, you set it up, and then it remembers the room. So that when you put the headset on, it already knows all the boundaries for safety reasons. So you don't break your TV or fall over a couch.
Yeah.
But that's a really great feature because you can take it around the house and it remembers the rooms that you've already mapped out, and it immediately puts you in VR if you're inside the boundary. And if you're just outside the boundary, it creates this nice little mesh that tells you where you need to walk to be in VR, which I think is awesome.
So you're saying you're using it for rehab. So what kind of things are you doing with that?
So there's a lot of really good apps out there now. The first one I did was obviously Beat Saber. That's probably the most well-known VR app and probably the most fun for a lot of people because it's simple. The reason why I chose it is because you can get a good workout from it if you really try hard. And the harder the level goes, the more difficult it is physically because you're swinging your arms all over the place.
Can you basically explain the mechanics of the game?
So
listeners.
So basically, you have two lightsabers color-coded in each hand, and then you have blocks that come at you, and each block is color-coded to the saber you have in your hand, and there's a directionality to each box. So you may have to swing down, swing to the side, swing up, and they're coming at you pretty fast, and you have to sometimes cross your arms over. Sometimes you have to swing your arms over your head. Sometimes you have to swing incredibly quickly because there's a bunch of boxes back after each other. And they're kind of synced to the beat of the music. So it's pretty rhythmic. And once you get it down, it's actually a lot of fun.
Are most of these apps you're talking about, are they mostly entertainment, like game related?
So not really. I would say the majority of what you see on there is games. There's a lot of media and entertainment. So there's TV, there's Netflix. And you can watch Netflix in a movie theater or in a home theater or on a couch with a fireplace. You choose.
That was one of my favorite features with my Go, was being able to watch 3D movies in a 3D movie theater that could be literally sitting on the moon, and you have the whole place to yourself, but it's so immersive. It really feels like you're actually in the theater.
Yeah. And then there's other apps where you can there's a lot of, apps where you can kind of communicate with other people in a common space. There's VR chat. There's, I'm blanking on the name. I know the logo that happens, but Rec Room. Rec Room is very popular for that. Rec Room is interesting because it's a social experience, but it's also a game experience where you play with those games with other people, which, I think can help a lot of people with their, sense of isolation right now. There's a lot of health related stuff. So there's a Tai Chi app I use. There's some meditation one I use. There's also a VR boxing app that literally is designed to look like it's a boxing gym. So I've been doing those exercises. Boxing is really good as a cardiovascular exercise. And I'm up to 10-minute classes right now because I'm not trying to overstress my heart, because that's the thing I've had the most to deal with. And it's really amazing because it feels like, you get to choose the environment. Do you want a dark gym? Do you want a light gym? Do you want to do it in space? Where do you want to box? Which is really cool.
How does that work when you're exercising? Does the headset stay firmly on your head? What if you're sweating? Does that kind of get gross after a while?
So my main headset is the Vive Pro, which is connected to the PC over there in the living room. And I actually have this replacement VR face material made by a company called VR Cover, and it just Velcros on to the headset because the headsets have removable foam, and it's designed to be wiped down. So you can get sweaty. It's no big deal. It's designed for people to get sweaty in it, and you just wipe it down. The Quest, I think, might have a similar thing now, but it doesn't come standard that way. I do get sweaty just a tad towards the end of my workouts, and that's how I know I had a good workout, obviously. But I find that most of these headsets recommend you get a good fit before you even do anything. And everybody's heads are different, so I always recommend you try and fit it to your face, firmly, so you feel pressure in these points. I think the Quest could obviously be better in terms of weight balancing. I do get a little bit of a red line just here, but it's a lot better than a lot of the older headsets. Like the first gen, people always had like a fat red line here. Sometimes they even had like red over here because too much of the weight was sitting on their face. You got to use the top strap to kind of alleviate that.
Do you find that you get sick? I had tried the HTC Vive in my living room, and it was awesome. Like I was in there for like probably like an hour to 2 hours on some of these different apps and games, but I found afterwards I felt nauseous, and my family members who tried it as well, they found the same thing.
So I think it really depends when you try the VR headsets, because we're in 2020 now, and the first headsets launched 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And things have changed considerably in those 4 years. A lot of developers are now building apps to really pay attention to performance and ensuring that the frame rate doesn't suddenly drop below 90. That's a real big barrier because most sickness in VR occurs when the frame rate drops significantly and you get that judder. And that judder, as you're moving, doesn't match your head movement, and that's how you get sick instantaneously. So the good thing about the Quest is Oculus is vetting all the apps to make sure you don't get sick from them. And they have a category listing that tells you if it's an intense experience or a less intense or a moderate one. And that lets you know whether or not there's a probability, even a chance that you could get sick. But I honestly haven't gotten sick from a VR app in a long time. I think it's a combination of the apps are getting better, performance is improving, and I'm also pretty used to it. But that said, I think if you look at where we are today in terms of technology and software development, it's day and night. So I would say most people's concerns about sickness are probably already dealt with. That said, I think there's a certain percentage of the population, something like 15 to 20%, that will get sick no matter what.
That's probably me. What is the price range on the apps that you're using in these VR app stores?
That's a really good question. So they vary wildly. Some are free, but those are usually subsidized one way or another. I found that most of them are I find they're mostly between $10 and $30, with a few in the $40, $50 range, but those are rare. I think part of that is because a lot of them are still not considered AAA. So we're still dealing with a lot of indie developers. And I also think it's because they don't want to price themselves out of the market. And I personally, I like supporting indie devs, but right now almost everybody's an indie dev on VR. What's interesting though is I've actually spent a lot of money on Beat Saber song packs, because in Beat Saber you get like 5 or 6 like free ones, but then there's another 5 or 6 ones you pay for, and the paid ones are like Green Day or Imagine Dragons. It's like not music that was made by somebody like on their home computer. This is like AAA songs that like everybody knows that have gone platinum.
Kind of like the Guitar Hero and Rock Band days.
Exactly. So there's another app that's not, I don't think it's on the Quest, but I might be wrong. It's called Audica, and that one's actually made by Harmonix.
Oh,
so they have access to just this insane music library. So I have that on the PC, and that one's a lot of fun to play because you can play like all the most popular music that's come out in the last couple of years. And they recently came out with another pack of music. So I like playing that too. That was actually the first thing I played before I played on my Quest, because my Quest needed charging, and I hadn't charged it in a few weeks because I was sick. And I thought I'd plug it in, but I didn't. And Audica is also a little bit less intense because you have these 2 guns and you shoot at little targets as they fly by, as opposed to swinging your arms. So I figured it would be a good way to get it back on the horse.
I think it's also worth mentioning too, there's a lot of free content, not necessarily games, but more of like BBC documentaries where it's basically the highlights of all of their, planet Earth types content where you're literally in, on a reef under the water in 3D. And so you can look around and it's like you're swimming on the reef. And YouTube has just
tons of generated content.
Yeah, just so much stuff that you could literally spend all of your free time right now watching free stuff if you want to just, virtually travel or virtually experience things like, swimming with dolphins or whatever, that kind of thing.
We've been talking with Anshel Sag. He is a VR expert about escaping, and what a good time now that we are mostly isolated. There's a number of different VR headsets out there that you can check out. Anshel, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks a lot for having me, guys. I appreciate it.